All right, welcome to the Data and Doctrine series. This is the last episode of the season. You know Matt, President McConkey, and myself by now. How many people have never attended this lecture series? Raise your hand. Don't be shy. Oh, that's strange. Well, I'm glad you made it to the last one. All right, we're on the last one here. Will ye also go away? Faith crisis and disaffiliation with the church. So this is going to be really interesting because, you know, I bet people in the congregation here, you've got some people that are like, I'm halfway out of the church. And then you got probably most of you that are like, I need to save my grandkids, you know, or I mean, like, so we have really, I think, a whole bunch of different kind of people here. And that's okay. All right. I have so many slides, and I'm going to try to get through them in a reasonable amount of time and try to catch my breath. If I'm going too fast, raise your hand and just say, Josh, stop. But I just have a lot to say on this topic. I'm going to start with this. I'm going to start with talking about the general global faith status. This is a complicated chart. It's very small. And what it is religious importance, that's the y-axis, versus GDP per capita. In other words, wealth. So up here at the top, you have poor and religious countries. And down here on the bottom, you have rich and unbelieving countries. Get that focus right. Well, it's close enough. Okay, up here, mostly third world countries. Very religious, very poor. Down here, you have your European and some Asian countries. Super not religious, relatively wealthy. You can believe what you want about the United States, but in this area, they are exceptional. It's very strange. They are the richest nation in the world, yet they still kind of sort of believe in God. It's very, very unusual. Now, if you go back to how our country was founded, it makes sense, but you're like, is that a real thing? Yeah, it was. There's something, some roots in our country related to religion, and so we're there. But, of course, this data is from 2014. We're going this way. We're getting richer, but we're getting less believing. So this shouldn't surprise anyone. Everyone, I think, has seen the headlines. We know which direction we're going. Man, can you believe that? Our country today is wealthier than any other country in the history of ever. The poorest person in our country has more opportunities for luxury than the wealthiest kings that have ever lived. I know that sounds crazy, but think about it. If you're homeless, you go to the side of the freeway with a cardboard sign, and in about an afternoon, you can get 50 bucks. You can buy a cell phone at Best Buy for 20 bucks. $10 prepaid, you can order DoorDash, and you can get caviar. The wealthiest kings in the world couldn't do that. They just could only get what they were able to get where they are. Today, even the poorest person in our nation has strange powers. I'm not suggesting being homeless is happy or pleasant at all. I'm just saying we are so accustomed to the incredible wealth that we have, we don't even realize it. Okay, now, this is the percent of respondents that said religion is not important in their life. You see back in 2005, and it's going up. Now about 1 in 3 Americans say religion is just not important in their life. It's going in the wrong direction, folks. America's confidence in the church or organized religion, it's going down. This is from 1974 all the way to 2020 about. And we don't have confidence in institutions anymore when it comes to religion. This is a graph on the y-axis. It's around 22, 24 million. This is the 6th largest mainline Protestant denominations. This is their membership. Okay, it was in the low 20-something millions. And over the last, about 20 years, 30 years, 7 million have left. So, I mean, imagine that. That's what is that? That's 1 in 3, right? Imagine if 1 out of every 3 Latter-day Saints disappeared. Well, we have 17 million on the rolls. Suddenly now we only have, 8 million, 10 million. What the heck's happening, right? Luckily, we're in better shape. But this data here shows you that people are bailing on institutional religion in our country. Now, this isn't to say that they aren't Christians anymore. They just said we're done with these institutions, that we're sort of the bedrock, the Protestant bedrock of our nation. So basically, polite, wealthy, educated Western society is turning secular, and this is where the currents are flowing. Big, heavy, strong currents are flowing in this direction. And if you're not paddling really hard against the current, you will go with the current. Just nature. That's how it works. Well, let's talk about Latter-day Saint faith trends. Okay, that was sort of the big picture as far as our world and our country goes. There's dozens of more fascinating graphs. You can keep digging down, but that was sufficient, I think, for our needs. So the question, do you believe God exists? This is a very standard sociological question when people study religion. The average American, we're at about 50% now, which is remarkably high, but it used to be 60 and 70%. So it's been steadily declining. I think it was a couple of years ago we passed that 50% mark. Luckily for us, the average American Latter-day Saint, 77%, are sure they believe in God with no doubt. That's fantastic. That's great news. I'd be really sad if it was lower. That's really good. I think I want to point something out, though. What this means is about 23% aren't 100% certain there's a God. They're in our congregations. They're with us. They're our brothers and sisters. They're part of our community. There's no requirement that your faith has to be this tall to be in the pews, okay? It's a really good lesson to learn. But generally speaking, we're a faithful people. This is interesting. Percentage of adherents attending weekly religious services. The only one who has this beat are the Jehovah's Witnesses. We're kind of number 2. But, so that's 3 out of 4 Latter-day Saints are like, yeah, we're there every week. Now we lie. Not we like Latter-day Saints. We all lie. It's a well-known sociological fact that people lie about how often they attend church. It's been studied for years. So if you just uniformly discount everyone, it's still a decent approximation. Okay? And actually, they did a study about 6 or 7 years before this. This is the follow-up study. Every single one decreased, except for us, the Jehovah's Witnesses, and the Jewish faith, strangely enough. But of course, the Jews are last place. So I don't know if that counts for much, but I'm glad some of them attend synagogue. Most of them are secular, frankly. Okay. Oh, yeah. By the way, if you're like, wait a second, 3 out of 4 people on the rolls don't come to church on Sunday, you're right. The data here is people that identify as Latter-day Saints. In other words, say you were baptized and then the next week you never went back. 10 years later, someone's doing a survey. You're not going to check I'm a Latter-day Saint, are you? But you're on the roll somewhere. They don't count in this survey because they can't, because they're invisible to survey takers. So this is, of all the people that say, I'm a Latter-day Saint, 3/4 of them come to church. That's what that means. So if you're thinking, hey, that doesn't add up to the rolls, that's why, if that makes sense. Okay, the growth rate of the church. This goes back to 1950. And you'll notice the blue line is our growth rate. And the orange line is the world growth rate, just the population. We've always grown faster than the world. As the world population increases, our population as Latter-day Saints grows faster. And that's been true up until that red line there. You're going to see a lot of these red dotted lines. I usually put them around the year 2000. That's when everything went to heck in a handbasket. So it goes down right around that time, along with all other religious faith in America. Right around the late 90s is when there was a big shift, sociologically speaking. And another way to look at it, this is a more complicated graph, but this shows stakes that we added and wards that we added and moving averages. But again, we had a great heyday in the 1960s and 70s, but things started going south as soon as, well, frankly, we get to blame everything on the internet. And there's a lot to that. But despite the growth rate going down, in absolute terms, we're doing okay. Now remember how the Protestant mainline churches lost 7 million members? In about the same period of time, well, not the same period, but about a third of the time period, we gained membership. We gained 600,000 new members in the US. So, yeah, a little skinny, but we're not losing millions, right? We're not losing a third of our membership. So that says something about the staying power of our faith. But we're all in the same ocean, and things are going poorly for all of us fish. Okay, now we're going to talk about former Latter-day Saints. Okay, that was just a quick snapshot of how we were doing as Latter-day Saints. We're doing okay, but things in general aren't going in a great direction with respect to faith. What do we know? Well, all this data is pretty fresh that I'm going to share with you. This is from the 2023 Current and Former Latter-day Saints Survey. It's got a fancy nickname, 2023 CFLDS. Very memorable. This is the largest statistically representative survey of current and former Latter-day Saints that's ever been performed. This was done by the B.H. Roberts Foundation, where I work. In 2011, the Pew Mormon in America survey surveyed about 1,100 Latter-day Saints. About 1,000. Then in 2016, Jana Reese, she wrote a book called The Next Mormons. She did a study of about 1,600 Latter-day Saints. And some portion of those were former Latter-day Saints. I don't know, somewhere around 300, 400 of them. She also did interviews as well, not just the survey. Then we did a 3,800 person survey, and we kind of did something different. Instead of using just the internet, and these are representative, this is not like a Facebook poll. Those are terrible. You shouldn't believe anything that you see that was sourced from some online poll, unless it's done with a representative panel by real-life statisticians. What we did is we sent 80,000 postcards out to all the counties marked in blue up on that map. And then we did a nationwide coverage with Facebook advertisements. And then we did some fancy math, and we got really good data. So anyway, that's where this data comes from. It's the best and biggest data we have on former Latter-day Saints in the US. Now, just some notes about this. Current Latter-day Saints that wanted to take the survey, we have data from them. Former Latter-day Saints that wanted to take the survey, and we invited them. We said, hey, this is for current and former Latter-day Saints. Current Latter-day Saints that didn't want to take the survey, and former Latter-day Saints that didn't want to take the survey, we don't have data from them. I know this seems obvious, but but the reason I'm saying it is because it's really important to understand, okay? Most people, when they have a survey about their little minority religion like us, right? We're a tiny little religion. They're like, oh my gosh, I want to talk about my faith, right? So we get people really excited about that. If, say, you were really big into golf for 10 years, and then one day you're like, I don't really like golf anymore, and you sold all your golf equipment, and you started getting into tennis. If someone said, hey, you want to fill out this golf survey, there's a good chance you're going to say, yeah, I don't really care. So a lot of former Latter-day Saints did not reply to our survey. They're the people that just don't care. Now, what if you just quit golf the week before? Yeah, let me tell you why I hate golf and why tennis is so much better. We might get some of them. But actually, we got quite a few. About a third of the respondents, roughly a third of the respondents, were former Latter-day Saints that were kind enough to share their experience and their thoughts. Okay? So I just want to couch this. This is really important to understand the context of this data. All right? There's also no international information, and this is a snapshot of 2023. Okay? So that we can't give you trends. Right? We can just say this is what 2023 looked like. It sounds like I'm being a little overly careful, but data is a really powerful weapon. Part of the purpose of this series is to educate you more on data and how it can be used and misused and understood and misunderstood. So please forgive me being a little pedantic about this sort of thing. I'm going to make a lot of general statements, so forgive me, but generally speaking, former Latter-day Saints are, for the most part, demographically similar to current Latter-day Saints. So they tend to be slightly younger, not a lot younger, but slightly younger. But aside from that, they're pretty similar. Now, there's one difference that's huge and unusual, I think. Former Latter-day Saints are over 4 times more likely to identify as LGBTQ than Latter-day Saints. 4 times. So we have roughly, if you say, hey, I'm a Latter-day Saint, and I'm in America, about 4% are like, yeah, I identify as LGBTQ. But if you're a former Latter-day Saint, it's closer to 17 or 18%. Big difference. Now, we can't tell you why. Our survey doesn't do that. It just snapshots the data. Lots of fascinating theories about why, but that's a big demographic difference. Belief in God, okay? Almost half of former Latter-day Saints do not believe in God. Or they're not sure, but they think it's impossible to find out. So effectively, they're agnostic, but effectively atheists in that way. So almost half, right? This is really disproportionate. This is big. What we learned from the data here is when you leave the church, you kind of bail on religion altogether. But not all of them. Not all of them, but that's just about half. A third of them still believe or maybe tend to believe there's a God. So that's quite a few, right? So if you know a Latter-day Saint, or someone who used to be a Latter-day Saint rather, there's a decent chance they still believe in God. Or if you are a former Latter-day Saint, 50-50 you believe in God or not. But this changes over time for all of us, This is really interesting. Prayer, about 1 in 4 former Latter-day Saints pray at least once a week. That's more than I'd think, right? That's pretty good. We'd ask the Latter-day Saints the same thing, but that's going like the same thing with going to church. They pray like 7 times a day on average. I'm just kidding about that. They don't actually say that. Okay. All right. Religious affiliation, about 90% of former Latter-day Saints are nuns. That means they say, I am not affiliated. I'm a nun. That's what they call them. And aren't affiliated with any religion. So 90%, that's a lot. So if you are a former Latter-day Saint or you know someone who's a former Latter-day Saint, there's a really good chance they just don't do church anymore and they don't identify with any other religion. Back in the 70s and the 80s, born-again Christian. A lot of former Latter-day Saints became born-again Christians, evangelical Protestants. Not anymore. Nope. Membership records. Now, I'll share this statistic with you, but remember, these are people that wanted to reply to the survey. So it doesn't necessarily represent all Latter-day Saints, just the people that said, you know what, I do want to talk about my former religion. 1 in 3 have their membership records removed. Okay, so another way of saying it is 2/3 of them keep them in the church. Why? I don't know. And why did the 1/3 have them removed? I don't know. But interesting data, again, for the segment that we surveyed. Sentiment towards the church. About 75% of former Latter-day Saints dislike or strongly dislike the institution of the church. This is sad, but not surprising. If you know people that have left the church, sometimes there's anger. More often than not, there's frustration and anger against the institution. This aligns with the secular trend in our country against institutions in general. Again, this is the group of people that said, hey, I'm a former Latter-day Saint, I want to share my opinion. But it is the largest data set that we have, okay? Now, this might make you feel a little bit better. Former Latter-day Saints, on average, have a neutral to positive feeling towards members of the church, right? To differentiate the church as an institution and members. So if you have friends and family that have left the church, and you're in the church, they might feel neutral to positive about you. That was a little bit of a joke. It didn't land right. I'm sorry. Okay. All right, let's talk about marriage. About 1 in 5 former Latter-day Saints are married to a believing member of the church. 1 in 5. Former Latter-day Saints are more than 2 times more likely to be divorced than current Latter-day Saints. That doesn't look worded very well. But basically, if you're a former Latter-day Saint, chances are way higher that you've been divorced compared with a current Latter-day Saint. Former Latter-day Saints are 4 times less likely to have been married or sealed in the temple. So there's a lot of really interesting relationships. There are a lot of relationships between marriage and sealing in the temple and whether or not you're still with the church. I would love to know more about why this is, but when you do this representative data, you have a very narrow window to ask a set of questions, and you just have to take one step at a time. So our first step was just get the basics first, and maybe at some point in time we can find out more about what's going on, what is the relationship. But I think one takeaway is if you are sealed in the temple, you are more likely to stick around in your faith. If you are not, you're less likely. Again, shouldn't be a big shocker to anyone, but now we have data. So that's interesting. Actually, I don't know if I'm going to say this, I can't remember in the slides, but if you are married to a Latter-day Saint, and you are a former Latter-day Saint, you have a higher probability of coming back. Not to give you any false hope, because spoiler alert, not many come back. At least not in mortality. I haven't heard any news from the other side, but here it's pretty low. It does happen. But if you are married, you much better chance. Okay, let's talk about children. Look at that stork. That's how birth control used to work in the 50s. Okay, former Latter-day Saints have almost 1 child less than Latter-day Saints. If you're a former Latter-day Saints, you don't want kids. That's a terrible thing to say. What I mean is you want less kids. You want less children. So it's significant too, 2.5 versus about 3.5. So that's what our raw, unweighted data says. We still have to do some processing, but that's a big enough gap that's significant. Again, this aligns very well with secular ideology. The fertility rate and the interest in having children is pretty well understood sociologically. The trends in America are going towards less children. And anything that happens to America affects American Latter-day Saints. We definitely, as a people, are pulled in that direction. But you'll see we've got some anchors, some really strong anchors, but we definitely get pulled in different directions. Okay, now I'm going to share 3 models of disaffiliation. I couldn't just pick one model, so I'm going to share all 3. And these models, here they are: Child's Hill, worldview, and marriage. The reason I'm sharing 3 models is because it's really hard to just say, this is how disaffiliation works. It's too complicated. It's too personal. So these are 3 different models. Some of them might resonate with you where you say, hey, I recognize that. And some of them you might say, I don't know anyone like that. And that's okay. They're models. Models are approximations, and they don't all work for everybody. But I'm hoping at least one of these models resonates with you and the people that you know and love. Okay? So that's kind of the caveat there. Now, oh yeah, let me tell you, this has been done before. In the Book of Mormon, there was a model for disaffiliation, right? See this woman here? I don't know if you can see that really well. I'm not sure she's holding on to the rod or not, but she seems really interested in what's going on the right hand of the screen there. And then these guys here, some of them took the fruit, and they sort of wandered off, right? I'm not going to talk a lot about this model, but just so you know, this is not the first time disaffiliation models have been created. It's a really good one in the Book of Mormon. Let's talk about Child's Hill, okay? So the way Child's Hill works is there's a conviction, that's the y-axis, and there's a knowledge, and that's the x-axis, okay? Everyone starts on Child's Hill, right? We have basic knowledge, untried testimony, positive social family connections. And let me just help you understand, this model isn't just, our life is full of peaks and valleys. So this doesn't mean like, wow, you have the knowledge of a 12-year-old. Congratulations. You might leave the church then. I mean, this is not what this is about. You might be 22 or 42 or 82, and we're all on some type of child's hill, okay? And then we keep climbing, and then we hit another peak, and so please understand it within that context, okay? Now what happens is we get new information, we form new relationships, new social philosophical ideas, perceived incongruences with the gospel. We run into conflicts. Old relationships get strained and broken. And then we fall off the hill. Now, that means our conviction goes down. We suddenly are like, I don't know about this whole church thing. Because we increased our knowledge a little bit. We got new information. You see that? We moved along the x-axis, started going down the y-axis. Y equals mx plus b, right? Okay, I can't do math jokes. I'm sorry. I'm just showing off. That's, 7th grade math. All sorts of things push us off the hill, right? I'm sick and tired of my hypocritical parents. Maybe that pushed you off the hill. You got one too many fights with your parent. Or, I can't believe the church sided with the political party I hate. What's going on? Or, I just sold my company for $50 million. Do I really believe in tithing? You're probably thinking, I wouldn't mind that hill getting pushed off. My new friends think my church is greedy and bigoted. Maybe they're right. I love my boyfriend, and I want to move in with him. My son came out to me as gay, and he's the most important thing in my life. These are all examples of things that can push you off a hill. Okay, there's lots of them. This is another sort of model, right? When you get pushed off that hill and you're tumbling down the hill, you kind of want, I need to grab on something to save myself. Sometimes a member with genuine questions and concerns, because they're falling off the hill, goes to a teacher or a bishop or stake president or a trusted family member, says, help. Just read your scriptures and pray about it. Oh, thanks. Now, I'm not saying, don't say, well, Josh said don't read and pray. Look, I'm just saying sometimes that is not the first tool to pull out of your tool bag.
Gone are the days when a student asked an honest question and a teacher responded, don't worry about it. Gone are the days when a student raised a sincere concern and a teacher bore his or her testimony as a response intended to avoid the issue. Gone are the days when students were protected from people who attacked the church.
He's saying, don't do that anymore. And if you don't know the answer, just say, hey, let's figure this out. But it used to be the day, hey, don't ask those kind of questions. I don't know if Adam had a belly button, okay? Our church leaders are saying we can't do that anymore. Okay? All right, so we fall off the hill. We end up in Insecure Canyon. We feel embarrassed because we fell off the hill. We feel guilt. We feel shame, anger. Our conviction is at its lowest. We've only gained a little bit of knowledge, but our conviction is at its lowest. Well, now we have to make a decision because no fun being down there. So what people often do is they go searching, because sometimes when they go searching for information, read and pray. I need something else. This has been going on for a long time. 19th century anti-Mormonism. That's a great source of information. When I was serving my mission in Boston, I felt kind of new to the church in so many ways. My best source for information on the church was anti-Mormon literature. I don't remember my mission president saying not to read it. Maybe he did, but I sure had a lot of fun with it. I don't recommend it, but I learned a lot because I was young and strong and had conviction, and it didn't bother me. But back then, Joseph was an ignorant drunk, and the Book of Mormon is babbling nonsense, and the Mormons will steal your women. That was the content back then. Not very scary today. Silly stuff. Silly stuff. You know what's really funny? There's an old anti-Mormon book that said, you guys know what an anachronism is? It's when you see a wristwatch in a Shakespeare play, you're like, wait, that shouldn't be there. There's an old anti-Mormon book that said, the Book of Mormon can't be true because the Nephites had a steamboat. I kid you not. That's how sloppy some anti-Mormon stuff was back then. I'm like, I missed the steamboat part. Okay, in the 20th century, anti-Mormonism was more like he was a delusional con man. The Book of Mormon is satanic. Mormons aren't Christian. The Mormon is a cult. This stuff's kind of gone now. But it was really popular for a lot of the 20th century. And this is not the kind of stuff people get into anymore. This is today's anti-Mormonism. Joseph was a genius con man, because how else would he have written the Book of Mormon? God doesn't exist. Religion is harmful. Latter-day Saints are bigots. The church is all about money. Oh, and by the way, yeah, we're going to still take that cult thing. That's anti-Mormonism today. So it's the pattern. You go search for information, and these people are always welcome to feed it to you while you're in Insecure Canyon, and you're vulnerable. These people will listen to you, and they will feed your anger and feed your frustration. And you're learning new information. Doesn't matter if it's true or not. It's a salacious narrative. It's irresistible. We love that stuff. It's like they just feed you sugar. Well, so what ends up happening sometimes is we say, I learned it a little bit more, and my conviction is now back to where it was. I absolutely know the church isn't true anymore. So we have betrayal, arrogance, we seek validation, we join a new tribe, the former Latter-day Saint tribe, and we can be completely disengaged. So that's one path. The other path, of course, is this path. And it's longer, and it's harder, and it's not as sexy or salacious, but it's a good path. We get to justified knowledge, tried testimony, and a nuanced understanding. If you're familiar with Fowler's stages of faith, it's a good place to look. Different stages in our religious understanding. But again, this is not a one-time deal. This is our whole life. Peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys. Okay? All right, so that's one model. Now, what's interesting about this model is it's predicated upon the idea that you can fix, I'm going to put that in big quotes, you can fix people by giving them more knowledge. Not surprisingly, it turns out that people don't care about data. They just, how they feel matters the most. And that's not a bad thing, right? A lot of our religion is based on feeling. Feelings are good. They're strong. Many of them are real. Reason and faith, there's a reason that we're taught by reason and faith we can come to know Christ. Okay, let's go to the next model. This model, I think, is more important than that model in some sense, right? The other one is good for some things. We're going to talk about the worldview model. This is, I think, the originator of this model. He might not say so, but I really think he was. It's Jeffrey Thain. He teaches in the psychology department at BYU, Idaho. This is a brilliant model. So I'm going to share that with you today. Okay? And the idea is that worldviews tell us what we should love or despise, what is valuable or unimportant, and what is good or evil. They're stories we tell ourselves. We all have stories, right? And our stories, every good story has similar elements. Character aspirations. What are we trying to do here? What's the plot? There's a conflict. What's the problem we're trying to solve? What's the goal? How are we going to resolve this problem? What's good life? What's the good life? What's the way the world should be? Who are the bad guys? Right? That's how you make stories. Now, we've talked about narratives here before. Remember our narrative here about Luke Skywalker? Right? A story about an orphan farm boy that's radicalized after a military strike, kills his family, and he's indoctrinated into a religious cult and joins a group of insurgents on terrorist attacks that kills hundreds of thousands of people. No false statements there. But it's kind of a lie, right? That's a narrative. That's a story. There's that word cult again. I think we've got a great cult, by the way. I like our cult. I wish it wasn't so much work. All right, now let me tell you about the Galactic Empire worldview. There's lots of worldviews, okay? Now, I know I do the Star Wars metaphor, and it's nice because it's neutral, right? We know who the good guys are and the bad guys are. So the character's aspirations, order, stability, and peace throughout the galactic throughout the galaxy under the authority of the empire. That's what we're trying to do in this worldview. Rebellion and dissent against the empire, that's the conflict. How do we get rid of these pesky rebels that are screwing up our empire? Elimination of the rebel alliance and enforcement of order throughout the galaxy, that's what we're trying to do. That's the end goal. And living without fear of war, conflict under the protection and guidance of the empire. That's the good life, right? So who are the bad guys? Well, the rebel alliance and whatever Jedis are wandering around. That's our worldview. If this is the only lens you see the world through, you end up with a narrative that we just saw with Luke Skywalker. And every time you run into a problem or a piece of information or have a problem in a relationship, you have that lens. Who's the bad guy here? Right? Who's the good guy here? What's the end goal? Right? Now, what's tricky about these worldviews is we're not conscious of them. We're not conscious of them. Are you recording that in the back? It's going to be on YouTube. It's okay. So it goes like this. Identify disorder and rebellion in society, right? That's what we do if we have this worldview. And then when we find it, we impose order and crush rebellion through overwhelming military force. And then we consolidate power and maintain order under the Galactic Empire, and we just rinse and repeat. That's the way our world works. All right? Okay. Let's talk about a consumerism worldview. And I bet everyone, here, let me be sexist for a minute. My wife's so nervous right now. I bet every man in this room either currently holds or is very intimately familiar with the consumerism worldview, myself included. This is not a bad worldview. If this is the only worldview you have, you probably have some problems. But this is an important part of life. Now, bear with me, watch. Material comfort, enjoyment, that's what we're trying to do. Go out and get the bacon, okay? What's the problem? Well, we need to pay the rent is the problem. What's the resolution? Well, I got to get a job and manage my money. What's the good life? Well, we're going to buy stuff that we like and we're going to be economically prosperous. Who's the bad guy? Poverty, economic inequality. Heck, I love it with my neighbor. Didn't get his boat towed away. You know, we all want to be nice, you know, and affluent and wealthy. There's a lot of pressure, right? And so you wake up in the morning and you're thinking, okay, am I going to get that raise or not? I mean, this is a big part of our lives. Not a bad thing. But if this is your only worldview, right, this is your life over and over and over again. That's the only thing that matters to you. Again, not a bad thing, but if it is the only lens you see the world through, and we all know people like this, I think, right? Let's talk about expressive individualism, a little more complicated. Live an authentic life. Become our true self. Judgment and oppression against us. My gosh, that's a problem, okay? Breaking free of old stifling social norms. Living in communities that celebrate authentic living without judgment. That's our fantasy. We want to live in a commune. We want to turn the whole world into someplace that's just cool about it, okay? Outdated social norms that make us feel judged. That's the enemy. If someone's judging us, they're the bad guy. And what do we do? That's Voldemort for all you millennials out there. That's the way you have to think about it, right? Who's Hitler? Who's Voldemort? Who is Sauron, right? Like, it's like, that's the enemy, and everything in your life revolves around destroying the enemy. So we find an oppressive community, because guess what? If this is our worldview, all communities are oppressive. None of them are perfect. Let's find the problems. And then let's discover and exercise our personal liberty. Hey, this is how I am. This is my true self. Now I'm going to rebuild a new community. But it's not perfect, so we're back to square one. And this is the worldview. This is what we do. We spend our whole life doing this. I lived for many years in Berkeley. I lived here. Not bad, but there's more to life. There's worldviews that I think are better. Okay? Let's look at secular humanism. This is the star of the show, guys. This is the star of the show. Ready? Personal and collective growth, knowledge, happiness, and freedom. That's what we're trying to do. Ignorance, superstition, oppression, inequality, environmental degradation. Those are the conflicts. Those are the bad problems we're trying to solve. Education and scientific advances will eventually, over time, elevate humans. That's where we're going to end up, the singularity. It's going to be great. Life's going to be perfect. It's going to be just like Logan's Run. Okay, I got like 2 laughs. All right. A life enriched by knowledge, culture, and ethical living and human rights. And who's the bad guy? Religious dogma, discrimination, human suffering, environmental destruction. Right? And what does this look like? Well, we got ignorance, superstition, inequality, and injustice, so let's solve it. We'll eradicate out false systems of belief. That's religion. And we'll do that through scientific education. Again, not a bad thing, right? We like science. But then we maintain this, and then we rinse and repeat. Okay? We're almost done here, because here's the restored gospel worldview. Hopefully this should feel very natural to all of you. Okay? Salvation and exaltation with God. Separation from God through sin and death, that's the problem. Redemption through Christ by making and keeping covenants. That's kind of how we fix that problem. Fruits of the Spirit, brotherhood, sisterhood, becoming what God wants us to be. And what's the bad guy? The adversary. This is super, super basic, simple stuff, guys. But if this is your worldview, it really changes how you think about everything in the world. Swap this out, put consumerism. Swap that out, put expressive individualism. What's the dominant filter that you see the world through? Okay? So, yeah, that's it. That's a primary lesson right there, over and over. It's all true. Now, here it is in action. Look at that. Look, it's the church. The church is a multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporation run by an oligarchy of old white men who exert control over millions of members of its organization through spiritual manipulation of promises of celestial glory or threats of damnation, all the while continuing to oppress sexual minorities and women and providing the bare minimum and actual charity to the needy. Okay? Look, here comes someone with an expressive individualism or secular humanism lens. That's their worldview, and they're like, yep, that's right. Totally rational. That's exactly how someone would perceive that, because that's how they see the world. Doesn't matter what information you give them, they have a lens, a filter. We all do, remember. But someone with a restored gospel lens is like, well, that's a gross distortion. That's not what the church is about at all. And we're scratching our heads saying, what the heck's going on? We've got different filters. We're looking at the same thing, very different. Here's another one, right? Or you could say a global organization that's focused on helping people make and keep sacred covenants with God. The restored gospel guy's like, yeah, that's exactly what the church is about. And the secular humanist is like, well, that's just not true. That's nonsense. This is why worldview is so powerful. It's like fish in water. Hey, fish, how's the water? I don't know what you're talking about. What's water? It's because it's just all around them all the time. They don't know anything different. The most important thing you can do is to become aware of your worldview. Ask yourself, who are the enemies in my story, in my life story? Who are the ultimate bad guys? What are my ultimate aspirations? What are the conflicts I'm trying to solve? What does the ideal life look like? Now, you might have a lot of answers to those questions because we have lots of overlapping filters. I hope one of them is a restored gospel filter. And God wants us to have that eventually being the most important filter. And I assure you, eventually, it will be the only filter. So, you might want to practice. Now, when people think about leaving the church or go through a faith crisis, they don't think of Tree of Life and the world. They just don't think about that, right? They've got a worldview in this model. they see this. That's pretty cool. Open-mindedness, progressiveness, smart people, entertaining people, right? That's what they see, okay? They don't see bad guys. They just see people. What do they see over here? Well, they see some Republicans and some money stuff and some old white guys. That's their filter. Which one would you rather hang out with? Now, I probably know the answer for many of you in the audience. But this is a filtered view of the world. Again, they don't look at the tree of life and the world. They look at these two things. All right. That's the worldview model. Now we'll go to model number 3. This is the marriage model. Okay, now we haven't talked about reasons why people leave the church yet. It's hard. It's hard to talk about this because, well, it's because it's like a divorce. If you ask someone, why do you get divorced? They say, well, here's a list. And if you go ask their ex-spouse, why do you get divorced? Their list will be different. Who's right? What really happened? I don't know. Sociological researchers have studied divorce quite a bit. They don't know. They're conflicting information about what's right and what's wrong that happened in that marriage. Very similar to what happens in disaffiliation. When you ask them, why did you leave the church? They say, well, what is the answer that makes me feel pretty justified? I know why. I had moral integrity. That's why I left the church. I was also intellectually honest. And that's why. I'm not saying they're wrong or bad. That's just what we do. Humans are really good at that. Did you leave the church because you wanted to sin and did you get offended? No, of course not. That's stupid. That's childish. So I can't tell you why people leave the church. I honestly don't know. I can share some ideas anecdotally and try to piece some data together. None of it will be surprising to you. Family. Man, family's tough. Family's tough. And family is highly correlated, good and bad, with the church. Doctrinal, historical, or policy. Social or community reasons, guilt or shame, embarrassment. Cost-benefit analysis. You can get a spreadsheet out and be like, look, it turns out weekends off and a 10% raise is pretty decent. Their equation's not quite balanced right, though, just so you know. There's an infinite amount on one side they miss. So people are 6 times more likely to blame their ex-spouse than themselves for the divorce. So obviously the math, it doesn't work out there. So when we hear narratives about people leaving the church, they can be sincere and true and good, but they're one side of a divorce narrative. So that's why it's really hard to talk about like what's real here, what's really going on. So the covenant relationship with Christ and the church, the reason why this metaphor works well is husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church. Turn, O backsliding children, saith the Lord, for I am married unto you. The marriage of the Lamb is come, and his wife hath made herself ready. This metaphor was invented by Jesus Christ. It's his metaphor. It's a good metaphor. I'm going to tell you about Gottman. So this is a guy that became well known for predicting divorces. He's a therapist, psychologist. And the short version, one of his first studies, he took 79 married couples that had been married within 5 years. And he interviewed them, and then 14 years later, he went back. Well, he interviewed them and wrote down, yeah, they're going to get divorced. They're going to get divorced. Oh, they're not. They are. They're not. He was accurate in 93% of his guesses 14 years later. Now, he did it again with 130 newlyweds. 6 years later, he's 83% accurate. Other scientists said, this seems like kind of a crazy thing. Let me try. And they replicated his results. He came up with something called a Gottman ratio. Basically, all he did is watch how they talked together for about 15 minutes. And that's all he needed. Kind of creepy sounding, huh? Someone can predict something so important in your life in 15 minutes. So let me tell you, basically how you talk to your spouse. And the topics were pretty, I mean, if I remember correctly in the study, he would just say, tell us about your day yesterday. I mean, these were not complicated conversations. But within about 15 or 20 minutes, a lot of things would come out. One is criticism, right? I have negative things to say about you. Just little slight things would come out. I'm actually better than you at that. It's contempt. Not my fault. Are you guys getting worried because you recognize this? I am. I'm really sorry, Kellyanne. We got in a fight right before. It wasn't that bad though, right? I was just kind of a jerk. Stonewalling. I'm disengaging from you. Silent treatment. Now, this stuff comes up all the time. This is normal marriage stuff. But in a 15-minute window, if these show up over and over and over and over and over again, you start to create a ratio of positives and negatives. And if you pass a certain ratio, yeah, you're probably going to get divorced. Those are warning signs of inherent problems in the relationship. And what happens if you have a negative Gottman ratio? You subconsciously keep track of this stuff. Let's say your wife is like, I'm going to make you cookies. If you have a negative Gottman ratio, you're going to think, well, what does she want? If your husband's like, I'm finally going to fix the plumbing. I'm really sorry I put that off. I'm going to do that. And she's going to think, okay, what do you do wrong? That's what a negative Gottman ratio gets you. Latter-day Saint Charities put aid in place around Ukraine before the war, and they're going to stay there. Or a COVID-19 project in 151 countries. Or they took supplies to Tonga after the volcano. The church should be ashamed of itself, bragging about its paltry contribution. Shame on you. Not surprisingly, that's a real comment on some of these news articles. This person has a negative Gottman ratio with the church. Now, here's something that's really interesting about the Gottman model, the marriage model, is 69% of happy couples still have the very same unresolved conflicts after 10 years, but they remain happy together. You know what? I have a big problem with that whole black priesthood, whatever it is. I'm not sure I like that whole polygamy Joseph Smith thing. You know what? You don't have to be okay with any of that stuff. You just have to work around it. I got a list. Do you got a list? And I'm not talking about the church. I'm talking about your spouse. We have things that bug the heck out of us. You just say, well, that's not going to get fixed. I guess I just got to live with that. And we do, and we're okay, and we love, and we're happy, and we grow, and it becomes relatively insignificant over time. That's a normal, healthy marriage. And when you're married to the church and married to Christ, guess what? That's what we do. That's what this idea that has to be a perfect marriage is immature and foolish, right? This is not a Disney cartoon. This is real life. It's hard. It's a hard relationship. Let me share something real quick. If you have a negative Gottman ratio, right, this is what ends up happening. You can have positive sentiment override or negative sentiment override. These are subconscious things that happen in your head, right? Let's say, and you'll observe this. You might be able to observe this in church sometime, some setting. Hey, we're going to Lagoon on Saturday with the young men and women. Last time I went, I got sick on one of those rides. So someone says that. If someone has a positive sentiment override, again, totally subconscious, positive Gottman ratio with the church, they'll say, well, that's sad. I got sick last summer on the rafting trip, but I got a priesthood blessing from the bishop, and it was amazing. I love the gospel so much. I mean, that's sweet. That's really nice. That's a big pick-me-up, right? We have a relatively neutral statement responded to by, a positive one. Look what happens subconsciously with negative sentiment override. You know what makes me sick? The fact that your youth leaders probably make sure the girls are wearing modest clothes, but let the boys wear whatever they want. The church is sexist and controlling. Yikes. Now, are they wrong? Well, okay, maybe we'll have a discussion. But if this is your natural reaction, then maybe you have a negative sentiment override. And your relationship with the church is controlled by that negative sentiment override. Your friends, your family, your priesthood leaders, Relief Society leaders, anytime they interact with you, if you've got a negative Gottman ratio and that negative sentiment, boom, 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 guess what you're swimming in? It's not the good stuff. Again, the solution, the first step is to recognize that this is part of who we are, part of our filter, right? The filter model we talk a lot about, okay? So these are the three models, okay? Each of them are a little different. Some of them, hopefully, you connected with. Maybe some of them you're like, that doesn't fit with me. But hopefully those were helpful. Okay, now I'm going to talk about where Latter-day Saints go. How are we doing? Are we in big trouble? No. We'll be fine. I can get through 20 slides in the next 2 minutes. Okay, where do they go? They go to the world. Let me tell you about the world real quick. It's fun, cool, smart, generally good people. They care about their families and loved ones. They care about social, political, and economic issues. The people in the world don't point and mock at us. They don't even care about us. I mean, they don't even think about us. This is generally true. Not always true. But honestly, guys, sometimes we can have a persecution complex. I mean, if you're like in Missouri in 1830s, then we were right, okay? But nowadays, aside from some really obnoxious, Hulu specials and Netflix specials, for the most part, people don't care about us. And the world's got a lot of great people in it. That's the world, okay? Polite society. This is what it looks like today. This is the cool part. These are the cool kids, right? Now, I'm going to get, political for a minute. Amazing, after careful study, man concludes Jesus would have all the same political positions that he does. Does that happen to you guys? The principles compatible with the gospel may be found in various political parties. And members should seek candidates who best embody these principles. That's what the church says. By the way, now we're going to go into politics. Ready? Oh, wait, one more caveat. I've never been a Republican or a Democrat. I think politics is boring and tedious. But I vote because I'm an American. I don't think I need to say that, but I feel obligated to in case you think I have some biases. Okay? I don't like either party. Never have. Okay, this is some interesting data here. Agnostics tend to be liberal and Democrat. Okay? Atheists are the most extreme political people on the planet. The most extreme. Very liberal, very Democrat. Now, we know where former Latter-day Saints go. They're with the agnostics and atheists. That's where they go. White evangelicals are up and to the right. Mormons are kind of moderate. Now, these different circles, the blue one are the young folks. The young folks are moving towards moderation. The old folks, pretty right-wing. Okay? Now, the reason I bring this up is because it's important to understand where the world is going. Conservatives generally are going down as a population. Liberals are going up as a population. This is where our world is going. All right? Despite what Fox News tells you. Or maybe that's what Fox News does tell you. I don't watch it. But there is a big shift going on. Jonathan Haidt, he's a social psychologist. He wrote The Righteous Mind. He wrote The Coddling of the American Mind. And one of my favorite articles, favorite thing he's ever written, ready? Why the past 10 years of American life have been uniquely stupid. It's good stuff. Good stuff. He's an atheist. He's Jewish. He's a Jewish atheist. He's politically, he's a centrist. He did something called moral foundations theory. Has anyone heard of moral foundations theory? Raise your hand. Maybe? No? Okay. All right. A couple people. Basically, this is the idea. Moral foundations theory is a simple test you can give a group of people. It will tell you, the premise is that humans make moral decisions based on foundational values. If you say, here's a problem, solve this problem, what should we do? They subconsciously say, okay, what are my moral foundations? And then they make that decision. And this is universal. So, what are the foundations? Care or harm? How important it is if someone gets hurt, right? How important is pain in the equation of morality? Fairness and cheating. Loyalty. You know, he's kind of a rotten guy, but he's in our family. What do we do? You know, that's an example of that. Authority, subversion, right? Hey, he's the boss. Should we do what the boss says because they're the boss, or are we cool with just chaos? Purity, degradation, right? If it doesn't hurt anyone, but it's kind of gross, maybe we shouldn't do it. Or maybe, who cares? Yeah, go for it. Okay, these are called individualizing values. If you highly value these, then you're an individualist. These are called binding values. These bind a society together. Now, studies have indicated you need both of these for a healthy society. Now, what I'm going to share with you here is, and this theory was developed in the early 2000s. It's been replicated many times. I think they've done it in 60, 70 different countries. It's a pretty fascinating, valid sociological test. The dark blue are extreme liberals, okay? Self-identified, where they're like, I am as liberal as you can get. They're Americans that say that about themselves. This is how they map out harm and care and fairness. They really care about that a lot. Man, if it hurts someone, it is not okay, ever. If it's unfair, totally not okay. Well, what if we kick someone out just for, I don't care. Who cares? Loyalty, that's meaningless. Doesn't matter what tribe we're in. There's no loyalty. Authority, respect, don't care about that. Purity, what's that even mean? So that is the liberal side. Former Latter-day Saints are the light blue. They map exactly with extreme liberals. Now, let me just tell you, I don't think there's anything wrong with being an extreme liberal. If that's your jam, great. You should be aware of how it maps out. What's interesting and important here is that we've discovered, where do former Latter-day Saints go? They go to the world, and they go to this neighborhood in the world. This is where they live. Now you know how to talk with these people that live there, because they're really different than us, ideologically speaking. Again, worldviews, radically different. This here, the green is the current Latter-day Saints, and the orange is the politically moderate American. We're pretty similar to the politically moderate American. The only difference is we're really about purity. Now, it's not just sexual purity. It's the concept of sacredness. Not surprising, since the core of a religion is the divine. Now, you can map extreme political right on here as well. They map similar to us, but we're closest to the moderate. What does this mean? This means that we kind of balance individualized and the binding values. But these folks just don't care about the binding part, right? It's just an imbalance. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying it is, okay? So what can we do? How can we be helpful? Well, we're bad doctors. We know the cure. Some of us have bad bedside manner. Sometimes we give them too much medicine. President Ballard said, if I have a family or friends who are less active, how far do I go in my attempts to bring them back? Well, please do not preach to them. Your family members or friends already know the church's teachings. They don't need another lecture. What they need, what we all need, is love and understanding, not judging. Beautiful words, really hard to put in practice. But there you go. Don't lecture them. Unless they ask for one, I guess. I don't think that happens, though, very often. So unhelpful things to say. Most people who leave because they got offended or they want to sin. Which is it with you? Don't ask this. Have you really read your scriptures and truly prayed about it? Please don't ask this. You should read this article I got from the Ensign, or maybe this one from BYU Studies. I think it'll answer your concerns. No, it probably won't. You just need to do some more studying and learn the real facts and stop listening to your friends on the internet. I mean, all of this is decent advice, honestly. They don't want to hear it. It's really unhelpful. If they want to confront you, well, tell them you believe in the gospel, but you're not an expert. Don't pretend you're an expert. None of us are experts. Probably bad ideas. Agree to read anti-Mormon materials. Oh, if you just read this orange PDF I downloaded from the internet, you're going to have a bad time, trust me. Just debate specific points of doctrine or history or policy or whatever. Yeah, debate. Don't do it. Waste of time. Contention, devil, all that sort of thing, right? Helpful things to say. So it kind of seems like you aren't really about the church anymore. Do you want to talk about it? No? Cool. Do you want to get some ice cream? Right? Simple. Do you mind if I ask if you still believe in God? Yeah, I kind of do mind. Okay. We're going to the zoo. Do you want some reason to stay, or you just feel like you need to take a break right now? Yeah, I'm going to take a break. Cool. Great. This is bumming me out, but I love you. Whenever you want to talk, let me know. These are all really safe things to do. And you got to be really patient. Play the long game, okay? Listen, don't argue about anything. Arguing is the worst thing you can do. Why? Gottman ratio, down. When you got a negative Gottman ratio, you're done. Back away. You wrecked it. Have someone else come in that doesn't have a negative Gottman ratio. And over time, try to repair your Gottman ratio and start again. Okay, long game. Does anyone come back? Only 8% said they might consider coming back. Sorry, that's a super bummer to share that. But remember, there's only a segment of the survey people, the people that just quit golf. Okay, so. In other studies, about a third of formerly religious youth come back, or a fifth. So, a little better. This is a happy quote I can end on. Even so, it is not the will of your Father which is in heaven that one of these little ones should perish, for the Son of Man has come to save that which was lost. And I don't get to share my testimony because I'm always not leaving enough time for President McConkie, and I don't think I have this whole series. Brothers and sisters, the church is true. God is real. I love this church. It's good. It's a good institution, and it's the Lord's institution. And I just want you to know that. I leave that with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Hey, this is Josh. I'm just cutting this into the program. We didn't have a chance to go over this during the live session, but I just wanted to share these resources with you that kind of are good within the context of disaffiliation. Faith is Not Blind, All In, Comeback Podcast, Latter-day Presentations, Faith Matters. These are all great resources for people that need to connect with the church in a different way, or if they're coming back to the church. So if you're like a podcast person, you like to watch videos, great resources for you or your loved ones.
Thank you, Josh. The reason that we did this series is about 6 months ago, I was laying in bed one night late, and I just couldn't get out of my head that we ought to do something like this.